Today, we're going to talk about forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of our spouse, forgiveness of family and friends. I'm Donna Murphy from Heaven's Gain Ministries, and my guest here is Kim Kelly, our peer support coordinator. So, Kim, tell me, have you ever had an experience where you needed to forgive yourself?
I did. I tend to be a person that's hard on myself, so this was a big one for me. I remember when we lost our son Bryce in 2009 that we found out he was a boy on Tuesday and found out he didn't have a heartbeat on Friday. I also remember the night before that Bryce was moving around quite erratically. I remember saying to my husband, "Now we know he's a boy. He's really showing his true colors." And we just joked about it. When I explained that to the doctor the day we found out he had passed, he alluded to the fact that that was probably when Bryce was passing away. And that was tough for me. I still wonder sometimes if I would have known, could I have done anything? I really don't think I could have. I was only 20 weeks along. I don't think they would have had enough information at that time to really help and do anything. But it did set me back in my grief because I did have to forgive myself for that.
Kim, my son was moving around a whole lot also. The week before we found out he died, he was moving around frantically, just moving around like crazy. And at the time, I was scheduled for an ultrasound. And when I had the ultrasound, they were like, wow, he's moving a lot. I said, yeah, I can feel him stronger than I've ever felt him before. And it wasn't until a week later that we found out that he had died. I mean, I was in an ultrasound. So I tell myself, well, maybe you could have, you know, done something about blood clotting or something else like that. But I was at an ultrasound and still they didn't know something was wrong when that was probably the time that his brain was dying from lack of oxygen.
Now that we're talking about forgiveness, Donna, let's talk about our husbands or significant others. Did you ever have a moment or moments where you needed to forgive your husband?
Well, yes. So with my three losses, um, two of them were in the second trimester, one was in the first trimester. But with one of my losses, my husband was actually out of town. Now, with my first loss and my last loss, he was wonderful. He was incredible. He was by my side. He stood with me. He was really my champion. He really treated me well. He took care of the baby, helped, with the burial and everything. And he did help with the burial with the one he wasn't as great with. But the one when he was out of town, he came back into town the next day and he just didn't understand why I was sad. And I can't explain to you how hurt I was. I was just so hurt. I couldn't even understand why this man who loves me and loves his children, why he could be so unsympathetic, so unempathetic. What was going on with him? And it actually took me 3 months before I actually talked to him about it. I waited to the point that I had already forgiven him before I told him about it. And then he actually did apologize.
My husband was also really supportive during loss. It really did affect him a lot, especially at the hospital. He is a person that loves seeing his babies born. He loves to be able to hold them finally. He talks to my belly when I'm pregnant. And so him being able to meet them face to face is really special for him. But I will say that I did have to forgive him at some point. And that was when Bryce had died. He went back to work a week later. And I had four little ones. They were all under the age of 6. And I was left at home in my grief, and he went to work. And I remember him coming home from work and telling me about his day, which wasn't unusual. But I remember him coming home and telling me about his day. And I was so angry that he didn't want to talk about Bryce, that he didn't want to talk about my grief. And I eventually did say something to him. And he said, I didn't know you needed me to tell you that I was still sad. And he was trying to be the strong one. He was trying to be the rock. And what I needed was him to be vulnerable. And I needed him to tell me how he was feeling. I later found out that he had picked a song for Brace and put it on his MP3 player that he would listen to at work. And I did not know that because he did not tell me. So once we did discuss it, it was much better. So I would highly recommend that if you are feeling this way, if you are feeling like you're not in the same place in grief, like you are angry, I would highly recommend talking it out, talking it through, because chances are they're just not telling you because they think you need them to be a rock and they don't know what you need.
That's really interesting that you're saying that, because dealing with family on my side of the family, when I lost our son Gabe at 17 weeks, he was 8 inches long. And, people could see this is a baby. And my family did not shed a tear, not one tear. On Jim's side, I had a couple family members shed a tear, but not my sisters, not my parents. Nobody shed a tear. And maybe it's what you're saying. Maybe they were afraid to shed a tear in front of me, because that has been something hurtful that probably has needed forgiveness for a while, because I didn't understand. If their child had died, I would have cried for their child. But why didn't they cry for me? Why didn't they cry for my child? And it was really hard to understand.
And we can never pretend to understand why someone reacts to a situation differently than we do. But again, I would highly recommend, if it is hurtful and it is something that you are carrying with you, I would highly recommend talking it out with the person just to conserve your relationship.
And have you had family members who have hurt you?
I have. And I truly believe, and I've said this before, I truly believe that when someone says something or does something that hurts us, I really don't think they do it on purpose. But we do have to forgive them for they don't know. And again, I can't express enough. I've had to talk to family members and friends about comments they have made or things that they have done. But I did that because I want to conserve our relationship. I want to continue being a friend with someone. I want to continue having an open communication, an open relationship with people. One of the things that was said to me was, at least you weren't very far along. At least you didn't know the baby yet. That was a tough one for me, because when I find out I'm pregnant, as soon as those lines pop out on a pregnancy test, I know what the next 9 months of my life looks like. I know how old the baby is going to be on their first Christmas, first Easter, what the first year is going to look like. That's just my personality. So to say I didn't know the baby is very hurtful. Another thing that someone said was, maybe this is God's way of telling you not to have more children. And that again was a tough one for me, because I really don't think that God, my God, would do that. I don't think he would take a baby away to show me or to tell me not to have more children, or that I wasn't worthy to have more children. So that was a really tough one for me. One that someone has said to me recently was, it's kind of weird that you still talk about your loss. Well, maybe to some, our last loss was about 6 years ago. So to some, that may seem like too long. But in my opinion, I try to talk about my loss for education and to help others. I never want anyone to feel isolated because of their loss. So I talk about my loss so that they feel comfortable to talk about their losses with me. Donna, has anyone close to you said anything, maybe recently or in the past, that has hurt you?
The last baby I lost, I was in my 5th month of pregnancy. And I had someone just 2 months after I lost him say, "Why aren't you over this yet?" And it is just amazing to me. Or people also say, "Well, you run that ministries to get over losing your baby, don't you?" And it's like you said, I don't do this to get over losing my baby. I don't do this to make good of my loss. I do this because I'm trying to make a difference for others. Because pregnancy loss is not talked about. Pregnancy loss is not allowed to be talked about. We do this because we're trying to make a difference for other people. We do this so that people will feel free to talk about their pregnancy loss, whether it be miscarriage or stillbirth or infant death, because your child is your child and you'll always miss them. And that's okay. But we shouldn't be stifled and not allowed to grieve. We shouldn't be stifled and not allowed to mourn or make memories with our child, to have little memorabilia to remember them by, to be able to go back and look at the pictures. All those things should be allowed. And that's why we do what we do. Now, one of the things we do, we're talking about here, is things that need to be forgiven. But how do you go about and forgive? Well, for me, sometimes what I need to do is I need to pray on it, because forgiveness is not just a human thing. Sometimes forgiveness needs to come from God. He needs to give us the grace to forgive. I don't think it's really such a human thing as it's a spiritual thing to be able to forgive someone. What do you think, Kim?
I think to forgive others is to love others. And the biggest example of love that we have is how God has given us his only son. And I believe that forgiveness is very spiritual.
Absolutely. I think that's totally true, Kim. I mean, we really need to pray and to ask God to help us to forgive those who have hurt us in all parts of our life. But in pregnancy loss, when you are so weak, so vulnerable, you especially need his help to forgive. Here at Heaven's Gain Ministries, we're trying to make talking about pregnancy loss less taboo. One of the ways we do that are with our services. We have services for individuals, couples, and group support. Kim, can you tell us about group support and how you work on forgiveness?
We do. We talk about forgiveness as one of our meeting topics. We have a 6-month rotation. And it is very important that we talk about forgiveness. And it kind of entwines a lot in a lot of different topics. But we do talk about how to forgive your spouse, how to forgive others, how to forgive yourself, and how to move forward out of your grief.
So, if you've had experiences where you needed to forgive others, please comment below. Let us know what worked for you, what helped you to forgive others who've hurt you during a pregnancy loss. Like and subscribe and comment below. This is Donna Murphy with Heaven's Gain Ministries, and
Kim Kelly.
have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye.